Welcome to Redefining Real Estate. I'm Rylan.
And I'm Morgan. Expect a mix of education, humor, and authentic conversation as we explore all things real estate.
Let's jump into today's episode.
Today, we're going to be talking about the importance of your credit score when buying a home and give you all the reasons why it's important during the process and even some tips from one of our mortgage professionals. So that way you can start utilizing these things right away. So Rylan, tell me about, first off, with buying a house, obviously everybody knows that getting any type of loan credit is important.
Right.
But it's a lot different than when you're buying a car. It's not
Correct.
solely based on the credit score. It's based off of multiple different factors, and credit
Right.
score is just one of them. So with loan types and whatnot, what has your experience been with your clients and credit scores?
A lot of people think that they need a lot higher of a credit score. They, off of first conversations, things like that, they'll be like, yeah, I'm at 600, 620, something like that. So probably need to build it up more. And obviously that's always great, right? Like to build your credit, that's always going to be positive for your loan type. But they're more in the boat of I can't get pre-approved unless I'm at a 650 or a 700. I'm like, no, I've seen people get, approved way lower than, 650 and all that. So that's kind of my initial, take, if you will. A lot of people are more worried about that they need a much higher credit score than what they actually do. And they realize that they're not so far off the number that they thought. So.
Right, yeah, when we talk to people and they're like, oh, my credit's terrible.
Yes,
and
yeah.
it makes you wonder, well, my idea of terrible and your idea of terrible may be two completely
Very
different things.
different things, yes.
I'm thinking 400 is terrible, there's no way you're going to be able to qualify anytime soon.
Right.
But yeah, in my experience, typically 620 is kind of the minimum that most loan types will require.
Right.
Of course, if you're putting more money down, that's a little bit of a different story. I think with FHA, you can go down to 580 if you're putting more than 10% down.
Yes, I think you're right on that.
And then with VA, it's something similar. I think they have even more perks where your credit score doesn't matter as much.
Yes, VA, you have a different, the bar is definitely lower. I don't know what that floor would be though, but I think it is 580 for FHA, but that's why we're not mortgage professionals. But if we were claiming to be mortgage professionals, we would know.
Right. Just as a caveat to this entire episode, this is based off of our experiences and our clients' experiences. If you want a personalized, strategy session, then you need to talk to someone who actually can look at your financial profile. But
yes.
Hopefully you can take this information and kind of apply it as needed. But with loan types and for us, the reason loan types vary and why it really matters is because if you're in a multiple offer situation and you have someone, let's say we have a VA buyer, an FHA buyer, and then a conventional buyer.
Right.
From a seller's perspective, if all of them are offering the exact same terms, exact same sales price,
all the things,
they're most likely going to gravitate towards a conventional offer, because to qualify for conventional, you have to have a high enough credit score to qualify for FHA, and usually you're putting more money down.
Correct.
VA, obviously, again, you're a veteran, so that's how you have that perk in order to actually use that, so it's a little bit different.
Right.
But along the same lines, you usually are looking at a 0% down payment with VA loans. So from the eyes of a seller, they're looking at these 2 or 3 individuals and saying, okay, well, this person's putting the least amount down.
Correct.
This person's putting a little bit down, and then this person's putting even more down, and they have the higher credit score in their mind.
Correct. Yeah, they're looked at as more like a stronger candidate, because if you can qualify conventional, like you mentioned, you can typically qualify for the rest of the loans, but it's not the other way around, right? So obviously the VA program is great, but there's always going to be something a little bit negative with those programs, and that's kind of what this is. In a multiple offer situation, it may not be a clear winner unless you have different terms in the contract, and obviously there's different things you can negotiate, but like you said, if all the terms are the exact same, I definitely agree with you for sure.
Right, and same with property condition on these loan types. Typically FHA, VA, even USDA, they're all going to have more strict property conditions, and when we say that, we don't always mean of course the house has to be safe, right? But I know with VA and FHA, some of their I guess property conditions that I run into a lot is like high soil, meaning if the soil is say the flower bed is a little bit high and you can't see a certain amount of the foundation all the way around the house, that's something that they may flag that needs to be addressed, which isn't necessarily a deal killer. Like, you're not going to terminate the contract over something like that typically, but it's like an annoyance for a seller.
For sure, and I feel like it always happens too, like especially in College Station, because we're known for like the soft dirt or whatever it may be. So yeah, I think that's always like a big thing to worry about here in town.
Yes, and then also like foliage against the house.
Yes.
I actually one time, and these are like small details that again are like you're not going to terminate a contract over.
But it has to happen.
It has to happen. I had a buyer once that was purchasing a home in Austin's Colony. There was a rose bush that was up against the house, and then like some like box bushes up against the house on like underneath one of the windows. And I think that the seller, it wasn't necessarily like deferred maintenance, but I think it was like a single mom or something, and she didn't do a lot of the yard work herself.
Right.
And so when the appraiser came out, they flagged the foliage against the house, and I literally went to Lowe's and like bought clippers because I was like, I'm not gonna make a seller like spend an hour outside
Right.
to do this. And then also my buyers were like elderly, so I was like, I'm not gonna like make that. So I just went out there and did it myself. So I'm like, again, this is not an issue that's a huge deal, and it was more so based on the situation, the circumstances.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
But still, it's like, that's why sellers, I think in their mind, have a bad connotation of like VA buyers, because you get these silly things that come up, and they can happen with FHA buyers too.
Right.
But VA just tends to be a lot more strict about it.
Yeah, and like obviously as sellers, like they're already, if you're at the appraisal process, like you mentioned, like if you're already that far along, like they may be moved out, they might not even be living there or really
Right.
and care about the house anymore. It's like in their mind, it may not even be theirs, and it's like the bush. Really, I'm not gonna trim a rose bush right now. It is really funny to me to think that you went out there and like actually were like the trim.
Oh, you should have seen me, sweat pouring off of me.
Yeah,
middle of summer.
I was about to say, I'm sure it was nice and cold outside.
Yeah, face red. Like it was. I was glad they didn't have any cameras on the outside of the house.
Yes. Well, that's just like little things, like you said, that are annoying, but like they have to be done if the deal is going to work. And sometimes that means you go out there and you trim a bush because it's touching the house. So, again, like you said, it's little things like that can not be in the seller's interest. Like they could just not even want to have to deal with that. Conventional route, you're not gonna have to do little things like that. It'll just be more of like a, hey, there's foliage touching the house, just letting you know. It's like, all right, cool, moving forwards, right?
Right. Yeah, and depending on how the beginning, like how the rest of the inspections go in the beginning.
Yeah.
That's where it gets kind of like the sellers are probably going to be super annoyed with this.
Yes.
And if as a buyer's agent, if you can make like the seller side even easier, like they're going to appreciate that, and then hopefully they'll get the grass mowed and they'll have the house clean. Like they'll do the things that aren't required of them, but that are nice to do for a buyer.
Right. Yeah, it's always good to build a relationship. Even if it's not like direct communication, but just showing like, hey, like we understand you have a lot going on. We're going to try and take some of that off your plate, and in turn, it may help your clients, like you said.
Right.
Yeah.
So we talked about credit score not being like the sole thing that approves you for a loan. Whereas when you're going to a car dealership and you're looking to buy a car, which I would say is like the people's second largest purchase that they would make, a lot of it, of course, is going to depend on your income. But most of the time, they're looking at your credit score, and they can honestly approve you for way more than you should be spending based on a good credit score or a bad credit score, and then having a cosigner with a good one.
Yes. Yeah, the biggest thing I'm seeing with mortgage loans and things like that is obviously debt to income ratio, and then all three bureaus, not just two of them or one of them or whatever it may be. And then obviously, again, income, and if you're having any other streams of income, that's all going to be documented. And I'm sure with a bunch of other different things, they all go into mind with all of that. But it's a lot more of an intensive approach, in my opinion, which it should be. It's a house. It's not a Kia Soul or something.
Right.
Not that those are bad cars. Love Kia Souls. But.
So true. Well, and I know something we talked about that you experience often is like people saying, well, I'm trying to save up this amount so I can pay off, like, I want to pay off this debt before I move forward with talking to a lender.
Right.
What do you typically recommend to people who are in that situation?
I don't want to say I default to it, but I always recommend talking to a lender first, because similar to like talking to a realtor before you start like doom scrolling Zillow, right? Like you want to sit down with someone and actually create an actual game plan. Look at all your finances. Say you have your car, like, I don't know, a four-wheeler or something, like a boat, and they're all on loans, and you're like, oh, let me pay off the four-wheeler first. Well, it may make more sense to actually pay the boat off, but like you're not going to actually know that unless you sit down with someone and they actually help you understand. If say you're at like a 600 credit score, you need to get to a 620, and you have those three loans, and you're thinking you got to pay off one versus the other, the lender may actually be able to tell you which is going to be the biggest, like I always call like a needle mover, like which is actually going to move the scale in your favor quickest. I had some clients thought that they had to pay off their truck before they did that. Turns out paying off the truck wouldn't really help them or anything, and obviously it wouldn't put them in like a bad financial situation. So they ended up just moving forwards anyways, and then paying off the truck later. So I always recommend talking to a lender first, just because they can help you understand what's going to be the best situation for you.
Yes, totally agree. And on that, I actually had some clients, this was probably like a year and a half, 2 years ago, that they were first-time home buyers, very new to the process, and they had connected with me and a lender. So they had been working with both of us for a while at this point, because they had to do some work on their credit to even be able to get approved.
Right.
And then when we got out and started looking at houses, we ended up looking at the very top of their budget, because they ideally wanted something brand new that didn't need any maintenance. They basically wanted, you know, something they could move into because they had kids and they really just didn't want to have to deal with projects.
Right.
So we found a new construction home, and then after talking with the lender and being able to utilize the builder incentives, which I think it was like $8,000 is what they ended up getting from the builder. And they didn't even have to use their, like, the builder's lender, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
But they ended up getting $8,000, I want to say, and based on what the lender said, she was like, you know, what would actually be more beneficial for you is, instead of trying to use the money that you had saved up for a down payment for that, since you're going to get seller paid closing costs, I'd recommend to go ahead and use a down payment assistance program, because at the time the rates weren't too significantly different for what they needed. And so they ended up using the money to pay off their car to lower their debt to income ratio, and then were able to utilize the down payment assistance program plus the seller paid closing costs.
Very cool.
In order to get the deal like as efficiently as possible.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. And it's things like that that no one else can really tell you.
Right.
And that's the cool part of having like a trusted professional and building those relationships, and having someone that actually knows what they're talking about. It's to me, it's invaluable. Like it's great. It's your client may have gotten, I don't want to say a worse deal, but they may have not gotten that good of a deal, you know? So yeah, I mean, I think it's great having trusted professionals and, again, building those relationships.
For sure. So that being said, I think that we all understand the higher your credit score, the better interest rate you're going to get.
Correct.
Right? There are different thresholds of credit, where if you're, you know, over a certain score, then that's the best tier of credit you could have, and you'll qualify for the best interest rate. But again, a mortgage professional is going to have to talk you through what those are. And if you can go ahead and start working on your credit now, even if you think it's good, unless it's an 800 or over an 800, I mean, you could still be doing things to try to make sure that it's increasing, you know, every couple of months. So let's go through some of the tips that we had. I think we had around 10 on a list for people to go ahead and start using.
Yeah. The first one is just going to be knowing your credit score. Don't go to Credit Karma and assume that all of a sudden you're perfect, right? Credit Karma doesn't pull all three bureaus like a mortgage professional will. It gets you a rough estimate, right? But it's not going to be like that dialed. It's not going to be as accurate as you need it to be. They're going to be looking at your actual like FICO score, not the, I forget what the other one's called, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think that Credit Karma pulls your TransUnion
And your
credit score,
yeah.
and typically a mortgage professional will look at TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian.
Yes.
All three of them.
Correct.
But yes, I have had one of them recommend, I think it's called myfico.com,
Yes.
that once a year you can get like a free credit pull
Right.
of all three of those, and that way you can, kind of monitor it from there.
Yeah, and you actually know where you're at, right? It's if you're looking to build your credit over time, you're gonna want to know what the starting point is. You don't want to be just barely at 620 on credit card, and be like, all right, perfect, let's go to a lender, and then they're like, oh, you're actually at like a 580 or something, right? It may not be that big of a difference, but just for an example, you wouldn't want that to happen if you've been putting in all the time, effort, and energy. You might as well just do it with a proper trusted source.
Right. And another reason to just know what your score is and monitor it is so that way if there's any errors on there,
Yes.
you can go in and dispute them. For younger people our age, you probably don't have many errors on there. You may not have much on your credit report at all. But if you are, over 30, over 40, the likelihood of having something old on there, like an old department store credit card or something like that, is pretty high. Or even if you've purchased properties in the past, 7+ years ago, I think that's the statute of limitations for a credit report is like
7 years?
Yeah, I think if it's like over 7 years old, like if it's bad credit or, like some sort of collections, I'm not really sure, but there is something with 7 years.
Yeah.
So,
Again, reach out to a trusted professional because they
Yes.
can tell you more.
yes.
What's the next one?
Paying bills on time. You would think this is kind of self-explanatory, but we're all we all have lives, we all have everything going on.
Of course.
Where, if you don't set something up on auto pay, then you may forget. So that would be my recommendation is if you don't have auto pay turned on for all of your stuff, and you aren't the type of person to literally sit down at the computer, the same time every single month and every 2 weeks probably to pay all your bills,
Right.
then just have it on auto pay so that way you know that it's never going to be a late payment, even if it's just like a credit card minimum auto pay payment.
Right.
So that way you never miss it, even if the next day you go in and pay it all in full. At least you have that
Right.
to make sure that it doesn't get late.
Yes, I've been kind of scared to do auto pay just off of personal experiences. But what I do. I set reminders on my actual calendar every month, so it'll actually notify me hey, go pay this. So if you are scared of auto pay and you don't want to maybe pay something that you're not tracking every time, it's always good just to have some sort of reminder to where you're not going to put yourself at risk.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great idea. And just know that late payments have a huge impact, and they're one of the easiest things that can happen because we're all human.
Correct.
So.
Yeah, we miss things, right?
Yes. Okay, so number 3 is reducing your credit card balances. So basically that just means, say on all your credit cards, if you were to max out all of them, that would be $10,000. That's your credit limit combined. You want to ideally keep the utilization of how you're using your credit cards under 30%, but I've heard under 10% is even better. Just lower. So there are some things you can do to increase your credit limit every few months if you are using a credit card. But again, you have to be very diligent about not maxing out your credit cards.
Yes, without a doubt. And again, I know that there's different numbers, but I guess the whole overall vibe is just pay it on time and don't use it too much, right? If you can reduce the payments or reduce the usage amount percentage, that's always going to be better, in my opinion.
Yes.
I'm sure there's something in there where you have to at least use the credit card.
You do. Unfortunately, you do have to use it, which is, I think, one of the big reasons why a lot of people, a little bit older than us, in their 30s or so, are very hesitant to even use credit at all. Because they're like, well, I'm not trying to go into debt. I want to be debt free.
Right.
Then they don't end up using credit, and then they have no credit score or bad credit score because they haven't used it.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely a balance that you just need to find. And again, it's not like rocket science or anything, but it is just good habits to be building.
Yes. Okay. So what is the next one?
Avoiding new credit accounts. I know that if you you're consistently opening new accounts or new credit cards, that can actually temporarily lower your credit score. So if you're looking to go get pre-approved and you're opening new accounts, it could have a very negative impact on your pre-approval process.
Yes, absolutely. Especially like you mentioned in the months leading up to actually getting that pre-approval, I would say within 3 to 6 months, if you can try to not get new credit,
Yeah,
then that would be most ideal.
for sure, without a doubt.
So the next one is going to be don't close your old accounts because the length of credit history is very important.
Yes, for sure. They want to see that you've been doing this for a while. You know, they don't want to be like, oh, like Morgan got a new credit card 6 months ago and she's been doing all right. You know, it's like, oh, Morgan's been doing this for like 10, 5 years, whatever it is, and she's been on it ever since.
Right.
So they want to see good history. That's what they're kind of going off of, right? They don't want to see something that's very fresh and new because you may do something sketchy. Who knows?
Right. You don't have the history to show that you pay your bills on time, basically.
Right. Yes.
But I have had a lot of clients tell me, oh, well, I just closed this old account because I don't use that card anymore. It's like, okay, I get it. You're not, you don't want to, you just want to close account because you're not using the card or you don't want to tempt yourself to use it.
Right.
But make sure you go ahead and just keep it open. Just stick it in a drawer. Stick it in the back of your junk drawer where you forget about it.
Yes.
So that way the account stays open and, you know, maybe use it every once in a while. And just make sure you don't close the account if possible. The hardest ones is whenever you pay off a car.
Yeah.
Because, you know, most car loans are going to be 4 to 6 years, sometimes longer. And so those are good, you know, uses of your credit history, but then when you pay it off, then it closes that account.
Right.
So if that's your only credit that you're using right now, make sure you do open at least one credit card so that way you can have that length of credit history going for you as well.
Yes, without a doubt. The next one is being, well, you would think this would be across the board, but
Yeah.
it is a tip. Just being overall financially responsible. If someone has good credit, I would say probably about 9 times out of 10 they probably have a good savings account, and then that kind of just ripples across their entire financial, I guess, history, if that's what you want to call it. But creating a solid budget, living below your means, saving money every month, all of those things are going to really be the overall, you know, deciding factor if you're going to be able to do what you need to do or not.
Yeah, I have a lot of people that, you know, don't feel ready to buy a house, and you know, maybe they won't feel ready until they make a certain amount or whatever. But my recommendation is always, like you said, like let's create a budget, make sure you have enough for your bills and to put money into savings every month.
Right.
And then also let's make sure you have an emergency fund set up.
For sure.
I know for us being self-employed, we are probably a little bit more extreme with our emergency funds.
Very extreme is, yeah.
You know, 6 to 12 months at least in our emergency funds, but I would say for a normal like salaried individual or someone with a stable job that you know is going to be long term, 3 to 6 months is probably fine of your, you know, expenses and bills. That way, if something did happen, COVID 2.0, and you lost your job, you know, you have some backup resources. And this would be something separate from your down payment, ideally.
Yes, yeah. It's always good to have multiple savings accounts for different purposes. It may feel like a lot, you know, but it's good to have it all like divided. That way you can actually see individual dollar amounts, not just like, oh, there's 20K in this one account. That's this, and this. It's like, well, like what, you know? For me, it's easier to say, yeah, like, you know, this is for me, I guess, this is for taxes, this is my savings, emergency fund, those situations. For me, it just makes it easier and more identifiable.
Yes, totally agree. And then the next one is going to be avoiding large purchases that can affect your debt or your credit. So
Yeah, for sure.
we kind of touched on that, right?
Yeah, the big thing I see is you go under contract and then by the time you're about to close, you're excited and you go out and buy new furniture and you're buying couches, you know, chairs, dining room tables, all these things. And then you go to close and it's actually time for the lender to do their thing, right? And your debt to income may have been off balance a little bit all of a sudden, and now you're having to put more money down or something's going on to where the deal has to change a little bit. So just try to avoid those things. Lenders should be coaching you through that, and along with us as well. We always mention it too, but still a great thing just to be aware of.
Yes, for sure. The next one is going to be paying off collections to make sure you improve your credit worthiness. So Obviously, if you can avoid having anything go to collections, that would be the even better scenario. But this could be an old account that you ran up when you were younger and at the time didn't have a stable job.
Right.
Things change, people's circumstances change. So I think the biggest thing is just, don't think that credit cards are just free money. Like if you run up the balance on something, at some point you're going to have to pay if you want to really take advantage of financing for anything big, whether it's a car or mainly a house.
Right.
So that would be my thought on that. Do you have any other recommendations?
No, I think you're right. I mean, nothing really is truly free in this world. If you're gonna go open a credit card for a minimum balance like $500 and you just run it up and then throw it in the back of your junk drawer, then just disappear. Like that'll follow you for a while. So yeah, just be responsible with what you're doing. If your goal is to eventually qualify for something this big.
Yes. Okay. Next one is going to be do not co-sign for others. This is a hard one. Especially for people with kids.
Yes, yeah. If I get, I actually have a client that's co-signing for his kid right now, which a little bit different scenario, but if it's a situation where your kid's a full-grown adult, they have their own credit, they have their own job, they have everything, they're all independent, and they're still asking you to co-sign for certain things, like they may not be financially responsible enough to have that in their name. So co-signing it for them may put you at risk.
Yes, and I have seen this specific scenario with multiple different clients of mine when they go to get approved.
Yeah.
Say they had a brother or a sister that needed help, needed a co-signer on their first car or their second car.
Right.
So they co-sign for them, and maybe this person is financially responsible, but the problem is now their car payment is on your debt. So even though you may not be paying it, it's going to show up to a lender like that's against you, because if your brother or sister defaults or whoever you co-sign for defaults, then you're responsible for that.
I'm going to say, so do you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's very difficult, especially when, people may have younger siblings, or maybe their kids are, starting to drive for the first time. Obviously, they're not going to have their own credit.
Right.
So that's just something that you need to take into consideration. And sometimes if it's for a family member or person who is paying it all on their own, sometimes the lender can ask you for, 12 months or 24 months of payment history to verify that you actually are not the one paying it, and they can remove that debt from the equation for you. But it's not always guaranteed. And again, you just never know what can happen in someone's life circumstances where they may lose a job and not be able to pay that payment. And now you have to.
Yeah, and they may be looking to just try to help as much as they can. So maybe if it's easier for you just to give them some funds or something like that, so they can use that towards this whole process, that may be easier versus putting your actual credit at risk if that's something that you take pride in. I'm assuming you do because you're the one co-signing for it. So I always say if you can get gifted funds, that may be easier than putting your name on the line. But it's all really going to be kind of up to you at the end of the day, and I guess circumstantial.
Yes. And the last tip that we have, which is something we've kind of harped on this entire time, is whenever you're going to think about buying a house, you need to seek professional advice. Of course, us as realtors, we can get you set up with the initial information that you need to get started and then connect you with a mortgage professional. But just going through the pre-qualification process can be really helpful to see how much that house on Zillow that you've been stalking for the last several weeks actually cost, and give you a realistic idea of it's kind of like when you have a crush. It's like you don't know enough information to really know, what's the deal with it. So it's
you need a report.
And so it's like, I love this particular house, and then you find out it's $1,000 more a month than you would be comfortable spending, and you're like, oh, actually, never mind.
Right. Yeah, and it helps you establish what's reasonable with what you're doing right now, and if that's not what you're satisfied with, well, you can get yourself a report. You can see where you need to work on things, and ultimately just achieve the goal that you're setting out to achieve in a proper way.
And how early do you think people should reach out to a mortgage professional? Or at least in your client's experience?
I don't really know if there's a number. I would just say as soon as possible. If I'm talking to you, you should be talking to them. That's kind of, the sooner the better, right? So if you're looking to move within 3 months or something, you may have things on your credit that need to be taken off. You may, be right on the line. If you just do these 1 or 2 things, you could qualify much stronger. Who knows what it may be, right? So the sooner the better, because the sooner you learn about your situation, the sooner you can actually get to, again, achieving the goal that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I think it really depends on the type of person that you are. Like, if you are concerned about your credit, again, the sooner that you talk to someone to then coach you on the things you need to do to increase it, the better.
Right.
But then also, if say you have a 750 credit score and you're like, I'm financially responsible, I've done X, Y, and Z, I've bought houses, cars, like never had an issue, then you're probably going to feel less like there's value in reaching out to a mortgage professional earlier. But like Rylan said, if you're on like the cusp of getting a better interest rate, you could be costing yourself thousands of dollars over the life of your loan,
right,
when you could do one small tweak over the next 2-3 months before you're ready to buy and actually get a better interest rate than you thought you could. So
and the only person that can tell you that is a mortgage professional that you choose, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like there's something else out there that'll give you all those detailed answers and give you a strategy to put in place for yourself. So moral of the story is reach out and seek professional advice.
Yes. And if you guys made it all the way to the end of this episode, make sure you like and subscribe. We are on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. If you found any of the information in this episode helpful, please share it on social media. And if you have any questions for us or are looking to get in touch with a mortgage professional, regardless of where you live or your location, you can find our Instagram links down below, and we are happy to answer any questions that y'all have.
Yep. We will see y'all on the next one.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. We hope you found something useful or at least had a good time listening.
Yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, feel free to subscribe or share it with someone who might enjoy this content.
And if you have any questions or topics you want us to cover, reach out to us on Instagram. Everything will be linked below for you.